Welcome to the Wellness Whisper podcast, a new series by Lyra, Botswana, where we talk about all things mental, physical, and social well-being. As 16 days of activism against gender-based violence is upon us, we will be talking about this topic today. We're joined here next to me by Miss Nature Inga, and I'll just give her the floor so she can introduce herself, give us a bit of her background, and what motivates her to be in this space as an activist. Hi, Nature.
Hi, Tsepo.
How's it going?
Very good, thank you. Thank you so much for having me. Thank you to Lyra for having me. As you said, my name is Nature Inga. I am a sexual violence prevention specialist. I started off as a gender activist in Botswana, and I was mainly working with women and children, but in totally different fields. So I've worked with people infected by HIV and AIDS, which is what my dad was involved in when I was younger. So I kind of grew up in that space and was always passionate about it. And It eventually led me to the space of gender-based violence and being very passionate about ending that, because I had no idea how bad the statistics were in Botswana until I was a full-blown adult. I honestly actually only found out about 5 years ago, and I was floored because we all know Botswana to be the safest country in Africa, one of the safest countries in the world. So I was like, how can these two things coexist? And that's when I decided to kind of take it really seriously and make it my mission.
Okay, that's lovely. Actually, my mother was also in the HIV space when I was younger, so we kind of get each other in that sense. Let's get into understanding GBV in through Botswana's lens. Tell us first a little bit about the 16 days of activism. What does it mean for us as a nation?
So 16 days of activism is obviously exactly what it sounds like, taking 16 days out to really, really focus on issues of gender and gender-based violence. And there's a different theme every year. And this year's theme is really, really focused on supporting women and children, which I love. Yes. Anything counts as activism if it's positive, if it's well-intentioned, and as long as you're well-informed, which I absolutely love. So that means anyone sitting at home just can make a post or share posts from organizations and individuals that they love and support in Botswana who are sharing it. And even just by watching this right now, you're taking part in 16 days of activism, which is you doing your part just by sitting and watching us and listening to us and hopefully learning something positive.
Fantastic. I love how we're roping everyone in already to take part in the 16 days, watching, sharing, subscribing. But anyway, on a more serious note, are there various forms of GBV, and could you break them down if there are?
Absolutely. So GBV is gender-based violence, if it's your first time hearing that abbreviation. I know that when you work in the space, it's very common to hear all the abbreviations, but if you're someone that doesn't work in that space, you may not actually know. So GBV is gender-based violence, and it's any form of violence or abuse inflicted on someone mainly because of their gender. And this can be anything from physical violence to emotional abuse to financial abuse, economic or socio abuse, any form of that at all.
Okay. I didn't know about the financial part. That's news to me, but it actually kind of makes sense. When people start withholding and
resources.
Resources. Exactly. Do you have any statistics that you can talk about with Botswana? I mean, I for one know that we are in the top 5 on planet Earth of reported rapes per 100,000 people, which is really bad, and it really puts us in a bad light, which is why also we need to talk about this more. But do you have any more statistics that you could share with us?
Absolutely. So a few years ago, we were actually number 1 on that list per 100,000. And, we have moved, but as you say, we're still in the top 5, which is absolutely terrible.
Unacceptable.
Yeah, there's lots of different statistics. I think the one that I use more often is by UNFPA, and it says that 67% of women have been affected by gender-based violence in Botswana, so it's almost 70%. And there's various statistics, because as I say, there's different forms of gender-based violence, so it depends on whether you're looking at rape specifically, people under the age of 18, but that one is just the most prevalent to me that I stick to, is that almost 70% of women have experienced GBV. I mean, to me, that's It's insane.
That's more than way too high, really. Whew. Okay. Let's talk about the cultural and systemic roots then of gender-based violence. Is there something ingrained within our culture that maybe might enhance those numbers, or might be a reason behind why the statistics are so bad?
Yeah, I mean, it's a touchy subject because I think people in general are very protective and sensitive about their culture and their traditions, right?
Yeah,
and especially I think Africans, we are extremely passionate and patriotic about our culture and our traditions. And sometimes it can feel like an insult to look at someone and say your culture is the reason this bad and horrible thing is happening.
Absolutely.
But I think it's just important for us to acknowledge that people decide culture. So as we grow and evolve as human beings, so should our culture.
Yeah.
But there's still a lot of kind of societal values that we have that have not evolved with us, and they do play a really large role in gender-based violence in Botswana. Even within, what we call the sanctity of marriage, culturally, it's very frowned down upon for a woman, for example, to divorce her husband, to deprive her husband of sex, to report her husband, to, all of these things. People will encourage you. Just deal with it, do it for your family, do it. But you find that a lot of times those societal pressures are only placed on the woman. I, for one, maybe it happens, but I, for one, have never heard a man being told, it's okay. Your wife beats on you, she cheats on you, she rapes you, it's okay. Be a strong man for your family. So it's kind of a lot of these patriarchal cultures, and that's not the only one, of course, but they're so deep-rooted and there's so many of them. We would need to do a 500-part series to really tackle them all. But
maybe
I think
we should.
Yeah, maybe we should. But I think it's just important for us to honestly dissect the way that we treat men and women and the differences, and more importantly, the way that we treat boys and girls, because it starts from such a young age.
Yeah.
And even just small things, a boy does something amazing, like, wow, tautona wa rona, and a girl does something amazing, and it's like, oh, utlanyala. So we are positioning young girls to really look up to marriage and see it as this grand prize, whereas the men were, teaching and training from a young age to focus on success and careers. And so eventually when those two do get married, their priorities are so different and they don't have the same values and the same things. So it's not to say that our culture is bad, our traditions are bad, but it's to say let them evolve with us,
Okay, thanks for that. And then, we are quite aware of the more obvious signs of someone who's a victim of gender-based violence, when we're talking about physical violence, domestic violence. But there are more subtle signs to look out for that, for the layman like myself, we can't really tell those signs. So could you expound on that? Even if the more obvious signs, if I didn't mention any, that you could mention those, but then also get into the more subtle signs that we might need to look out for.
Yeah, I mean, there's very obvious signs. Obviously, if anybody is physically harming you, that's a very clear and obvious sign. If anybody is verbally abusing you or assaulting you, if someone is insulting you, calling you out your name, yelling at you, shouting at you, it's very clear abuse. But there are more subtle signs that people may not pick up on. Very small things. There is something, for example, called negging, where somebody attempts to make you doubt yourself, make you feel small about yourself, and it's just little things, and sometimes they're disguised as a joke. For example, someone can say, Nature, everyone says you're so funny, but you've literally never said anything to make me laugh. And it's just such a random thing. You see, and I'd laugh at that if someone said that to me, right? Yeah. And it's like, oh, okay, cool. But then maybe later you find yourself thinking like, oh, he doesn't think I'm funny. He doesn't, okay, maybe I should try and be funnier when I'm around him. Maybe I should. And this is just a silly example. Yeah. But people who are purposely abusive and very good at gaining control of you will say these little things all the time and neg at you. So that subconsciously, without even realizing it, you're constantly fighting for their validation and trying to prove yourself to them and trying to win them over. And that makes you ignore a lot of their red flags and bad things that they're doing to you because you're so busy trying to validate yourself with them. Yeah. So it's really kind of things like that. But again, as I say, withholding resources from you is a form of abuse. If somebody is love bombing you, so you've just met someone and they just insanely pour out, profess, they tell you, let's get married next year, let me introduce you to my family, I bought you a house, I just all this stuff, you think, wow, I've met my soulmate, and then within a couple of months you see that they've suddenly pulled back. And it's a form of abuse to get you to have this high standard of what it means to be in love with this person, and when they pull it away, your automatic thought and belief is that you've done something wrong. And so now they start to give you this hot and cold emotional reaction that causes a negative psychological effect on your brain that, again, will have you emotionally and mentally fighting for this person that is actually just using mind games to control you. There's so many things, unfortunately, to look out for. But I just hate putting the job and the work on the potential victim, to, look out for these signs and do this and do whatever. It just seems so unfair. So I think it's always easier to say that once you clock it, once you wake up to the fact that you're being abused, to leave if you can. I know it's not always that easy, especially if you don't have the financial means and you don't have a support system. And by the way, those are also important things. They will often try to keep you away from your support system, turn you against your friends and your family, isolate you, things that will potentially make it harder for you to leave in the future. Convince you, quit your job, I'll take care of you, all these things. And really, it's quite often a trap. So, enjoy your life, but just be aware and keep your support system strong, and make sure that you can always support yourself, not just financially, but mentally, emotionally, with the people that you have close to you.
Oof, you're really opening my mind right now. You're making me see and understand so many things that, like we said, it was subtle. No one really would ever see things like that. I want to get into the workplace and gender-based violence. So how can victims or perpetrators of GBV, how does that affect their professional careers and their workplace dynamics, their professional life?
Obviously, as a victim or a survivor of GBV, it comes with a lot of trauma. And that can affect not just your work, how you interact with people, your personal life, all of those kinds of things. It's really difficult. I always encourage people to seek therapy and to get help, to really find a way to come to terms with what has happened to them, accept it, heal. I hate to say move on, because I know it's so hard to move on from, but therapy to me is always the best move. Even if you feel you can't open up to family or to friends, it's so important to just seek that professional help and guidance. I think also in the workplace, GBV does occur because, as I said, it can be emotional, it can be mental. There's a lot of unfair gender standards that people overlook and do not see that happen in the workplace. And so it's so important for organizations and companies to take that into account when they're building their manifestos, when they're training their staff, when they're doing their team building sessions. It's small microaggressions that certain genders can face in workspaces because of their gender that, again, were societally programmed to laugh off and to just make it an easy thing, when really it's just unfair and shouldn't be happening in the first place.
I love that word, microaggressions. It's self-explanatory, but it says so much. Microaggressions.
It's micro, but when it happens all the time, every day, it builds up until it doesn't feel so micro.
Absolutely. So I like that you spoke about therapy and stuff, because, shameless plug, Lyra, Botswana, we do workplace wellness. So we're a B2B that does psychosocial support for companies. And, we do anything from 24/7 telephone counseling to your regular face-to-face counseling in all its forms. And with the trauma counseling and specifically GBV related cases, we handle those. So I like that you spoke to therapy, because that's our MO over here, which is
It's so important. I know
Yeah.
that, and I love the work that you do. It's so important, and I think that CEOs, bosses, founders who really put their employees' mental health at the forefront will always win. A happy employee, a mentally healthy employee, is somebody who is going to be more productive, is going to be better to be around, is going to be able to be fully functional in the workplace. Really investing in the mental health of your employees is investing in your overall organization.
Absolutely. That's your key resource, your people.
Yeah.
And once you take care of them, that will just boost your business to new heights. So we commend CEOs, we commend the HR professionals in the companies for taking on employee wellness programs, and we commend the people who are interested in the product as well. So I mean, we're getting close to the end now. I just wanted you to say some words of encouragement, for the listeners. Talk about where they can access help, outside of Lyra, of course. Any hotlines they can call and anything like that.
I don't know none. I'm joking. I don't know them off the top of my head.
You almost got me.
No, I don't know them off the top of my head because they are so many. But if you go to my Instagram page, I am Nature Inga. In my bio, there's a list of lots of resources and also educational materials. So you can watch educational materials that help to speak about gender disparities and what role you can play in putting an end to gender-based violence. There are resources if you are a parent or if you are a teacher on how you can speak to young children about this, how you can teach and practice consent with them from an early age. There are resources on people you can reach out to for help. I just have a ton of resources there, and I must admit I don't know any numbers off by heart because there's just too many.
Yeah.
But they are there for you if you want them and if you need them on an individual level. And then of course on a corporate level, you know that Lyra is here.
Yes, absolutely. So, let's look out for the science, guys. Let's talk about this more. Let's fight for better legislation and laws to help battle gender-based violence in our country. Any positive word, any farewell you'd like to give to the audience?
I'd just like to thank you again for having me and to thank everybody who's watching, because as I said when we started, this is your way of taking part in the 16 days of activism, educating yourself, supporting individuals and organizations who are playing a role in making our nation better. So thank you so much for your time and your energy.
Thank you so much, guys. That was the Wellness Whisper podcast by Lyra, Botswana.